very happy to be here and especially honored to be able to introduce Dexter. In fact, I found myself seated between Dexter and Raymond Ibrahim. I get regularly all the things that they write. They both of them, come into my computer and I read them very carefully, and I recommend to everybody to get on the mailing list for both. Now I say something about Dexter in just a moment. Perhaps you permit me to make 4 very short remarks about what we've heard this morning. The first remark is the following. All this talk about narratives. I have definition of narratives in this sense. A narrative is a pack of lies that demands uncritical assent. And so when people come to me and say, you must listen to this narrative or that narrative, I say, well, as far as I'm concerned, a narrative is a pack of lies that demands uncritical assent. And usually the people are so astounded that they then have to start thinking about, well, maybe they should say something about the truth. Secondly, I would mention we have to remember the conversation between Elijah and God, where Elijah says the whole nation of Israel has deserted you, and God says, no, there are still several thousand who are faithful to me despite everything. And this is a situation which we are in today, and this we see from all of the speakers. The third thing I remember is something that most of you don't know. When I was a child or a young man in the 1950s, one of the important British trade unions, the Electrical Trades Union, ETU, was taken over by communists. And they got into power and they manipulated power, they manipulated elections, they manipulated meetings in all kinds of ways. And this was quite well known, even the press wrote about it. And the membership of this union, or people in the membership, eventually started a long process to reverse this, and they succeeded. They succeeded in getting rid of this communist leadership. What we see today going on is exactly the same process. We've seen it mentioned in various churches. I think the spider at the center of the web is the World Council of Churches bureaucracy in Geneva, which also, by the way, was the main sponsor of the Kairos document. My fourth and last comment is about Augustine. Now, very well known is Augustine's idea of the Jews, who have been displaced lost their state and rule till the end of time. They are there, and so on and so forth, just waiting for the return of Jesus in glory and so on. However, there's also one of Augustine's tractates, and it's discussed in this blue book that I published, 89, in which he talks about the promise of the land in the Bible. Now, Augustine distinguishes between the seed of Abraham in the flesh, by which he means the Jewish people, and the seed of Abraham in the spirit, by which he means the church. And then he asks the question, was this land, which seed of Abraham, to which seed of Abraham was the land promised? And he says, quite clear, the seed in the flesh. And then he asks himself, all right, so they have lost their state, and so on. So what about this promise? Oh, he says, no, the promise is still valid. And you can see it is still valid. Why? Because for sure the Jews have been expelled from their capital, Jerusalem. But up and down the land, everywhere, you still see the Jews everywhere. This is a sign that God is keeping his promise to the Jewish people. This is an amazing thing in Augustine that most people don't know about. Why? Because in church history, this particular tractate was overlooked. The one person who might have picked it up, either from this or somewhere else, was Calvin. We heard also about Calvin and Luther, how they are both very critical of Jewish people. But there's one difference. Luther is critical of the Jewish people because he regards them as out. They're finished. And Calvin is critical of the Jewish people because he still regards them as in. In other words, in Calvin also, the promises, the covenants of the Old Testament, they're still valid. His concern is that the Jewish people are not, they didn't become Christians and so on and so forth, but they're still in. And so you have in Calvin a combination of, on the one hand, the need of mission to the Jews, and on the other hand, the recognition that the promises are still valid. And this, by the way, has been behind a great deal of Protestants to this day. I don't need to elaborate further.